What's up, guys? Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com for another edition of Winning Wednesday. Hope you guys are doing really well. We had the Arnold last weekend in Columbus. It was kind of disappointing. We didn't have a very good turnout as far as people at the Arnold. The booths were garbage. I thought the whole setup was kind of shitty and just tossed together. It was way overpriced, so it went up to $40 a ticket just to go walk around, which I thought was a little bit outlandish, especially with who and what was there at that time. And it was just a lot of bullshit. Like the Arnold had, what's going on? Boat Hill firefighters. I was just a little disappointed with the Arnold this year. We did pretty well at the gym. We had a lot of people stop by, some pro football players, some pro strength coaches, the guy that invented Train Heroic. So we had a lot of good people stop by. It was just really sad to watch the Arnold pretty much just fall apart. I know Jim Lorimer's passed since the what's going on, Caddy Fitness? What's happening, Judah Ratzliff? What's going on, man? It was just kind of sad to watch the Arnold just kind of disintegrate. I really didn't think it had any star power this year. It just felt flat, unorganized, and really shitty. So I didn't stay but more than a couple hours, and I heard Saturday wasn't even that busy. But we had a great bench press seminar, and and like having stuff like slap fights and stuff like that to me is just not. It's just not good for the fitness industry as a whole. I think, the Arnold used to be about pro bodybuilding. It used to be about pro strongman, and it used to be about pro powerlifting and extreme lifting sports. And now it's just turned into a fucking Walmart of bullshit. They had, jousting, fighting, and horseshit armor, just dumb stuff. So I really just wasn't happening. Ronnie, Big Meat. I don't do a lot of seminars in Chicago. There's a handful of reasons. One, I fucking hate Chicago. Two, Chicago is only like 5 hours from my gym. So it's one of those things where I just, Chicago is not really my thing. I drove up there to help Maddox last summer. I hate driving into Chicago. I hate getting out of Chicago. It just sucks. But, not to be negative Nancy, but yeah, the Arnold was complete garbage this year. The bench seminar was awesome. We had a lot of people show up that wanted to learn how to get better, that wanted to get their technique better, and I felt like they got a lot of information in the time. The good thing is we filmed it. I'll put it at top tier Patreon, and then we'll also have it for sale for a good price on the website for that. So our guest tonight is Zach Evanish. He's been training high school kids and developing athletes for at least since 2001, I believe. We've been friends since I think 2005 or 6. So as soon as he comes on, don't be sad you missed the Arnold. It was absolutely terrible, but be sad that you missed the actual bench press seminar. As far as announcements go, we have a manual coming out for over 40. So anybody could use it, but it's really designed for over 40. We have the bench press manual just came out, and then I have another manual that I made that I can't remember what it was. I want to say it's anti-aging, but I think that's the over 40. We have two new products coming out within the next 2 months. We still have the raffle going on, which I cannot fucking believe that it's still even going on, but we have a raffle. So for $49.99, you get the choice of 3 manuals, and then you get put into a raffle ticket for a free belt squat, which within reason, if it's not too far away, I will custom hand deliver it, show you how to use it, and give you a small seminar on the actual belt squat, which is a great deal. So you're winning basically with shipping. You're winning a $4,500 machine for $50. The firefighters manuals right now. 30. Just wanted to make some announcements that we got a bunch of new products. We also have the fat handles now already on the website for you guys to order. So those are there. They're built awesome. We've been beating the shit out of them at the gym for 5 years now. So we finally put them up for sale. Is there still no sound? I can't understand why there's no sound. It doesn't make any sense to me. There should still be sound, I hope. Oh, there's Zach Evanish. I don't know why Zach's not popping up. I just accepted him to come on. You guys can hear me now? Okay, cool. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm out in the country, so it's sometimes my attachment stuff's not real good, like my connection. So hopefully you guys can hear me now. I'm still waiting to join Zach Evanish. For some reason, I accepted his invitation, but he didn't join in, so I don't know what's going on. Why don't you ask to rejoin, Zach? I know you're on here. Ask to rejoin the conversation and see if we can get you loaded up. Yeah, try again. I don't know what happened. I tried that, but so yeah, check out saying Zach Evanish is unable to join. I don't know what's going on with that. Oh, there he is. Let's see if we can get on there. View request, accept. Let's see if he pops up. There he is.
There we go.
What's up, dog?
What's up, my brother?
Man, just grinding away, dude. You know me.
I just was at my gym, just left. Got a group going there now. And then today was training at my high school. So I'm
nice.
I like what was that movie where like Tom Cruise was like, I will rain down and ungodly. Yeah. That's what I just did there. I went kind of ballistic, and I told my coach, I was like, dude, I better leave before I like take a bazooka out on these kids.
That's Tropic Thunder.
That's right. Yeah. I can't remember what
I wrote down I usually do 3 questions for you, 3 questions for me.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk a little bit about, I know we got the seminar sold out, so we'll have that for people that couldn't make it. We'll have it taped so that way people can download it, which will be awesome. So I'm pretty excited to get out there and hang with you and DeFranco for a couple days. But yeah, I can't believe how fast it sold out. That was just like bang.
3 days. It was 3 days or 2.5 days, and it was boom, done. So it's great to see that there's hungry people signing up. I'm pretty sure they're all coaches, but sometimes you have people that show up and they're like, yeah, I'm just doing this because I want to get better. And, you know, about 2.5 weeks ago, I co-hosted a business seminar with some friends of mine. And just attending those seminars, you just had the seminar at your gym during the Arnold weekend, it inspires you and it just moves you towards action. You know, I go back to a couple of years ago when I went to your gym when I was with Rutgers. The Nationals were in Cincinnati. So I remember I reached out to you and you're like, yeah, come by. And as soon as you said come by, I was like, I better get stronger and eat better. You know, I think it's important. You got to get out of your own backyard.
Yeah, you know, the thing of it is it's weird because the Arnold, speaking of this weekend, the Arnold is such a weird draw of, I wouldn't say people that are half-assers, but you just got so much bullshit that I'm almost glad. I've heard rumors that the Arnold's not going to be in Columbus next year, and the way that they held it this year, it doesn't surprise me. It was terrible. I
think too much stuff. Too many events. They had the face slapping. I mean, it's everything.
Yeah, to me, the Arnold class will always be about pro bodybuilding and pro powerlifting, and they've went so far off the deep end on what I consider Walmart shit You know, like I don't give a fuck that somebody can slap another dude out. I don't care about people dressing up in medieval armor and fighting in a 50 by 50 cage. Like to me, that stuff is like, if I want to go watch that, I'm going to go down to Walmart here by my house and watch people beat the shit out of each other in the parking lot. Because you got the same, people are wearing the same shit, you know, sleeveless cutoffs. It's just, they've just made it so hillbilly. And you know what was funny is like, there was only a quarter of the vendors there. It wasn't big at all. And you saw so many things that just didn't even have any connection to lifting at all. They had people that were selling gutter protection and like, just, it was just weird. Like, I don't know. It was just sad. But what I wanted to talk to you about, which I think is you're the expert in this, what are some big issues that you see with today's high school strength training?
Yeah, I saw that you had posted that. So for those that are listening, you know, I'm full-time in a high school. So on average, I'm coaching about 150 athletes, pretty much every sport in the school minus the swimmers, golf, and bowling, you know. So, yeah. And then also I've had a private training business since '02. And what the big struggle is now is there's so many coaches, people do not, whether it's parents, kids, they cannot decipher from expert to somebody who's got, hey, they've got better equipment. And so even in the high school, I struggle with kids showing up to train with me. You know, I had a conversation with a kid today because he wants to do his own thing. I'm with my private coach, but what the sport coaches want is train with the team. And if you want to do extra beyond that, you go to your private coach like myself, who should then be able to say, all right, Matt, what did you do today at school? Excellent. I'm going to fill the gaps in according to lack of specialty equipment that you don't get, weak points that you need addressed. It might be mobility. It might be regenerative recovery type work. But you know, to put it in a bland way, Johnny Parker said to me, he goes, the definition of an expert is a coach who does not work in that town. So like, if I'm in Columbus, I know Columbus is such a huge city, but like that, I'd be like, Matt Wenning's 5 minutes away from me. There's no way that guy could be a world champion and he's so great. So now they want to go elsewhere. John Wellborn calls it proximity bias. So the issues are, they do not stick to the plan. You know, they want to come and go and jump to all these places. And when you do, when I train kids, I assess by looking at your physique. Okay. If you've got muscle on your body, now I'm going to see if you could move. Some kids have no muscle. They've been going to a private coach for 6 months and you show up and you still look weak. To me, that's not only a problem for the athlete, I feel like it's a disrespect to our profession. And that's going to make it very difficult for our profession in the private sector to move forward. Because if you're training with somebody for 6 months and you're still struggling to keep your back flat, or you don't know how to do a trap bar deadlift, or you don't extend your arms to a full range of motion doing an inverted row, basic stuff, what's being taught, what's being learned? So the issue is too many chefs in the kitchen.
Oh, I agree. I think what you hit the nail on the head. And I think the biggest problem that we see now is the advent of social media and us being internationally connected so easily has actually just hurt, because it's given microphones to people that didn't deserve them, they didn't earn them, and they don't have the background to really tell anybody what to do. And it really seems like that's magnified their microphones, and it's almost shut off microphones like mine and yours and DeFranco's and a lot of great coaches, because kids don't understand. They see somebody with, say, 500,000 followers on Instagram and they think automatically that they're an expert, when in reality they're just selling people a bunch of fucking garbage. And I think that's a huge issue that we're dealing with right now, is that you're seeing a lot of uneducated people assisting people that are in a vulnerable position, i.e. kids that don't know between right and wrong. And then what ends up happening is, by the time they need fixed, I'm not saying it's too late, but they've already created an improper base,
And those kids are now uncoachable. They struggle to be open-minded. So, I'm 46. I've been training since age 13. I'm still trying to like break what I do and learn and get better. And so sometimes I have to tell kids, yo, you're 16. I've been training twice as long as you've walked the earth, which, by the way, if I want to play devil's advocate, just because somebody's done something longer doesn't make them better. Better is better. But too often these kids have an answer back. And so I was, listening to an old podcast I did with Johnny Parker, and he said when he went to the Giants, Phil Simms being the quarterback, that's the quote unquote star. That's the lead guy. They, most of the time they want something special, something different. But he came to Coach Parker and said, I don't want a special program. Let me train with the linemen. Let me train with all those guys. And years before that, I remember Coach Reeve, when he was at Wake Forest, he said their best team, the quarterback trained with the linemen. He wanted to clean and bench. He wasn't like, I can't bench. I can only dumbbell bench. And so this overly conservative training or this fancy shit, nobody gets strong. And
Yeah.
and
Right.
that becomes a big issue. The kids that stay with me consistently, that maybe their parents can't afford a private coach, they do great. And we really attack the basics. The prep is very much based on like a Wenning warm-up. Maybe we have a few more exercises, so it's not 4 rounds. I'm also a bit limited on time. I have 45 minutes with a group.
Right.
But we attack the weak areas. It builds their technique, their mobility, and their base. Then we hit our strength, our power work. We do a lot of supersets to build our GPP. And then right outside our bubble is a hill where I do all different kinds of sprints, different starts. And if you look at it, it's a real basic, strength training based system with like a blend of what Herschel Walker did, sprints and jumps and med ball throws. So I heard this from a guy who was a Marine Raider, which is, a special forces. He was talking about all the different weapons that the special forces have today. He's like, I don't fucking need that shit. He's like, I'll fucking kill people with like whatever this, I don't know what kind of gun it was, but he said, brilliance with the basics. He's like, I'm not trying to be great with 50 guns. And he said, that's a problem even in the military, is trying to be fancy. And so, unfortunately, there's too many coaches, and I'm using air quotes because, man, if I'm still trying to get better and, you're like in your early 20s and you know it all, that's failed me. Because if you're not getting better as a coach, how do you expect kids to get better? That's why every day I'm studying at least an hour, reading, watching, getting better.
That's the biggest problem, I think, is there's just so much noise to the kids these days. They just don't understand what to decipher. And, I always thought, well, shit, if I have world records that people will listen, if I had a master's degree, people will listen. If I was injury-free for almost 30 years competing, people would listen. And you start realizing that, the good people listen, but it's really difficult because there's so much smoke and mirrors today. What are some of the big things you've seen ignored with beginners?
They jump to advanced movements way too fast. For example, a back squat to me is an advanced exercise. And
Agreed.
So you'll hear kids say something like, I do this. My dad taught me how to do this. One kid said to me, this is great. I was like, dude, I haven't seen you since football season ended. He's like, I know, I've been training on my own. Who are you training with? My dad. My dad's a pro powerlifter. And I didn't want to say, bro, I'm a historian. Don't fucking make me go down the rabbit hole of searching who's a pro powerlifter, because I will go through the rabbit hole. So what I do is have standards, which I really stole from Jim Wendler, because he's at that high school in Ohio And I called him before I got hired at this high school because the numbers in each group are massive. And he said, look, if somebody wants to back squat, here are the standards. And it was something crazy. Like you had a goblet squat 100 pounds for 50 reps. It was something like balls out crazy. So I was like, okay, if you weigh over 175, you got to squat 100 for 10. If you're under 175, squat 75 for 10. So our freshmen, when this was the first year I was actually able to train freshmen in the summer. The previous year was all this stupid COVID shit. It made a massive difference. So when they started training in mid-June, they didn't touch a trap bar until middle of August. So they went 8 weeks of body weight, dumbbells, and bands. The things I don't have at this school, because I'm training 50 to 90 kids in a group, I don't have sleds. You know, I don't have some of the specialty stuff. But I'll have to do a video. I actually have a recent video tour of my gym. But long story short, they skip the base work. And before you're benching, I want you to dumbbell bench a certain amount of weight for sets of 10 before you could go to the barbell. I know your initial experience at the YMCA, the guys wanted you to do a certain amount of pull-ups before you could bench. Let's say, though, I give the freshmen, you'll see the training program on the board. It might say eccentric bench press, and it might see 3/6. If you're on the barbell, you're doing 3 reps. If you're on dumbbells, you're doing 6. Well, I tell them this: if I see you miss a rep, or I see you squirming or turning your head, not doing the technique I've taught you, you're off. You go to the dumbbells, and they know it. So if they miss a rep, they learn, damn, I overshot it. And so I also tell them, just because I'm using a barbell doesn't automatically help me put points on the board. You got to earn that shit. So when I teach the squat, I tell them that it actually begins in your mind. So when we're squatting on a Monday, you should be thinking about it on a Friday night or Saturday. Imagine me, I'm telling 15-year-olds that shit. They're probably like, fuck that. So I tell them how to set up your hands. You know, a lot of kids get under it and then they get their hands, or they don't center themselves. And so people try to do advanced exercises. And I could go back to being at Lehigh. That was the first Division I university I worked at. Although Rutgers used to travel to my gym in 2009, I went to Lehigh thinking, Division I, we're cleaning, we're deadlifting, They looked like shit. So for 2 weeks, they were doing body weight, dumbbells, kettlebells, and I made sleds out of tires. I trained them the same way I would train an incoming middle school athlete. They, you know, D1 athletes are freaks. This was like a top 12 team in the country at the time. So they built a base very fast, and we were able to move to barbell work after 2 weeks. But most of my freshmen, even though they get to the barbell, everything has a standard. It's earned. So too much jumping to advanced exercises when we need brilliance with the basics.
I 100% agree with you. What are your top 3 pieces of equipment that everyone needs, in your opinion?
Great question. So I go with kind of 3 movements. I say you need carries, something to carry, dumbbells, kettlebells, sleds. I mean, it's so simple. It's very hard to mess up. They get you strong. We could use them for speed. We could use them for endurance. If we do them for extended periods of time, it builds muscle. And then just the ability to do body weight. So I want to have bars for pull-ups, rings for recline rows. A lot of kids cannot do pull-ups. And back that up, a lot of high school kids can't do push-ups. And that to me is a liability. That's a danger. You know, my job, even though strength coach is the title, my job is to protect the kids. And I tell them, if I'm going to protect you, I need to get you stronger, faster, tougher. And if you're weak, you're now a liability to your teammates, and you're a liability to yourself, because there's other kids out there training to destroy you. And they're like, and I'm like, I train those kids. They go to the private sector and do the work. So something that gives me freedom. I love kettlebells, but I could use a dumbbell as well. I love sleds, preferably the dragging sleds rather than just the push, because I could attach it to a waist belt, a harness. I could use it in my hands. And then freedom for body weight. And then, of course, I want to use a barbell. But I make people earn the right to get to a barbell.
I agree. So what are some questions you got for me, big guy?
Well, you know, I was thinking today, I haven't seen you training Trey for a while. So I didn't know if, like, you're just not recording that. But let's talk about when you see somebody who gets the most results, what are the key factors? What are they doing that maximizes their results? Because I see people program jumping, nutrition struggles, and I'd like to hear what you think about these kind of like 3 top elements that allow people to keep getting results. Because
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think the big thing is you've hit the nail on the head: consistent learning, right? And the problem is that everybody's a different equation. You know, everybody is an algebra equation with different numbers and different ways to solve their particular issues, based on the fact that we're all anthropometrically different. We all have different fiber typing, and we all have different cognitive abilities of ways to make ourselves shine. So I think having that understanding that not everybody is me or you, or not everybody's going to develop the same, is always in the back of my mind, to try to make sure that I'm thinking about how I can get this person to shine with whatever they have, and then also do it in a safe and effective manner. I would say the big thing that I see is a problem, but not a problem for the people I see that are successful, is patience. I think really genetics ties in clearly how well you're training, but how fast the training you adapt to the training. So what I mean is, you get a guy like, say, Bo Jackson, and you put him through a 6-month rigorous weight training program, he's going to shine like an average person's never going to shine. That doesn't necessarily mean that that average person can't make amazing results. It just may take longer. So I get very frustrated in seeing people trying to sell 6-week and 8-week and 12-week programs, when I think you and I both know that the average person can be excellent at something, but a lot of times average people need a longer timeline in order to sustain or make that type of progress. So I find that being consistent and patient are 2 of the tie-in points that I think really make somebody a champion. The next thing is always putting technique before intensity. I think that if anybody ever watches me lift, I think the one thing that I want them to pick up on is, number one, I'm 42 and I've been competing since I was 13, and you don't ever see me do anything with improper form. And you hardly ever see me fail. And the reason is, I think that failure in intensity has been pushed way too difficult or way too high in our field without the proper baseline of technique and consistency. Not only increase ligament, tendon, and bone density. You know, I mean, the one big thing I think that especially beginners do not understand is that your muscles will adapt to training far faster than your skeletal system. And what you need to do is you need to have not only deloading built into your training to help that progression be more equal, but you also need to make sure that you understand that progressive loading takes a long time for the skeletal system to adapt. I think that the muscular system, and why anabolic steroids and performance enhancing drugs, especially with developing athletes, is so dangerous, is because it allows the growth of the soft tissue to happen so much faster than the connective tissue. And then that's when you create all these major problems that, in my opinion, are very hard, if not impossible, to fix, which ties back into the patience thing. The third thing that I think would be a huge factor, if I could go back and relearn what to do, which, you know, nobody understood, is always having that, maybe not constantly with your training, but having that mindset of traction versus compression, which we haven't really hit on in this topic. But I think that the average person needs to understand that compressive movements need to happen in order to adapt to training, but they also need to be limited, especially in the developing stages, based on the fact that that's when you're probably going to get the most injuries. So in my personal opinion, if you can figure out how to attack proper motor patterns in a traction-based environment, especially as a developing athlete or a seasoned athlete, you got to learn how to make progress with the least amount of mileage. And that becomes something that I think that the industry is not hitting on, not talking about, because it's a long-term thought process. So for me, having that mileage scenario, having that patience scenario, and having all the things entwined with that are very important.
It's so, touched on like a couple things. Whenever you mention a lot of like your technique, never missing reps, my early years of training is what injured me, because the information available was from Mike Menser, Dorian Yates, Joe Weider. They promoted high intensity, forced reps, drop sets, strip sets, destroying your body, adding, quadruple to 5 times the amount of mileage on the body versus get it done, leave with a little bit in the tank.
Always.
And and also, Matt, speaking of the traction based, people have to be, if you're serious about your health, you must be willing to invest in not just education, but equipment. So I have your belt squat. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I bought your hypertrophy and nutrition manual. Something I often say is, don't ask your friends for the shit they've put their lifetime of work into when you could just buy it. And that puts skin in the game. So by doing that, my nutrition has changed dramatically. I went and got blood work, and I don't think I would have been motivated to do it or get the blood work if you would have given me your programs for free. That's why I tell people, don't send me shirts, don't send me your stuff for free. And when people say that Wenning belt squat is expensive, I don't, you're talking about long term. I have kettlebells 20 years old. That belt squat is going to go with me or my kids. It will outlast my lifespan. And so if I want to break down my investment into monthly payments, it comes out to pennies on the dollar. And I wish I knew now, what compared to back then when I was a competitor. And that's why I think I'm still coaching so much. It's because I'm trying to pour that information into the younger generation with hopes that I could help them achieve their goals. But you got to be open-minded. Same with the adults. You must be willing and hungry to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what's question 2? That was a good one.
This would be the next question for you. So you've been training the fire departments for a while, and technology is so big, but guys like you and I tend to do a lot of the coach's eye, memorizing, writing things down. So I'm wondering, how do you track, or how do you have the firefighters, what are they using to track training, if at all?
So we just started them all a few months on Train Heroic app.
Yeah.
Helping me out tremendously. What I think is, and this can be, obviously everybody has their own opinion, but what I really track is the injury rates with the insurance companies. That's really the tracker, because here's the thing. You and I want to hear performance numbers. I have performance numbers, and we do this biannually. Usually one time a year they have an optional test, and one time a year they have a non-optional test. And every time we've done the non-optional test every year, everybody gets exponentially better in strength and conditioning. We use a kettlebell to the eye test because we don't need a lot of equipment. We don't need a lot of room. When I first started at Washington, the average 35-pound kettlebell swing was less than a minute, over 120 guys. The last time I tested it, the average was 5 minutes. That's pretty impressive, and
500% increase.
And then
500.
Now this is what gets crazy. The average deadlift was 200, and the last time we tested it, the average deadlift was 400. So double the strength. Now this is a 10-year block, so don't get me twisted. This isn't some 8-10 week program. Here's the kicker. The insurance companies, as they've promoted the data or showed us the data, which I can't collect, that's on them, we were spending $550,000 in 2007, And by 2017, they were spending $100,000. So now there is no other data that matters, because when you go talk to fire chiefs, you can talk all the performance. We both know that that's what lowered it down. But what they really want to see is how much can you save me? Because most of those guys, especially at the trustee level, they're not performance driven, they're money driven. So you have to play in their ballpark. That's the biggest difference between being a strength coach and actually having numbers like that. And those numbers have gotten me every job with every fire department that I've ever worked with. Those are the numbers that allot you a $200-300 an hour amount that you can charge to a township, because if you can save them six figures, then you can name your price. So that's kind of what I do. But now that we have Train Heroic, it's amazing how much more we can create that data saving.
Yes.
But what I have found is that we have all the data from the last 10 years, every year, of everybody getting better, the average kettlebell swing, either individually or as a group. When we turn in those particular numbers to the fire chiefs, I don't give them individuals because I don't want it per name. We give it per unit. So what we find is, yeah, you're going to get a couple guys, you're never going to, you know how it is with big high schools. I mean, some of these fire departments, I got 100 to 150 dudes. We got a handful of them that aren't getting any better because they're not doing the work, and I can't do anything about that. But on average, I can change the entire department's mindset and make sure that they don't hire those kind of people ever again.
You and I had a conversation how I had met a firefighter who was out on disability, and he's so getting paid salary. And then what that does is it freezes a job hire. So they're paying somebody who's not working. Now they can't hire somebody else. And it's
they're also paying somebody else to cover his fucking shifts overtime. Yeah. So now the guy that was making $40 an hour is making $80 an hour because he's working off shift to cover a guy because they can't hire another guy. So it's a snowball effect of amounts. It does not take long to get to that six-figure number off of one back injury, one knee injury, or one shoulder injury. So really, because the medical costs have risen so high, that my job has become so important to saving townships money, it's a no-brainer. So that's why we're really taking a stronghold in Ohio right now. But like I said, I could take that performance numbers to any fire department, and I'll tell you right now, it's not going to get me a job. What gets me a job is saying, in 5 years, I will save you $250,000 in insurance premiums. Now, all of a sudden, boom, right? They're all about it. But I know how to get there, which is increasing performance, but I don't sell performance on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, we had this conversation years ago when I called you to ask you about it. And in the government, as you know, there's like now many government contractors hiring certified strength and conditioning coaches. And I was actually offered a job at a military base. But long story short, I asked them, like, when does this contract end? And at the time, they said 7 years from now. But they said these contracts are not going anywhere because of POTIF, which is like protection of the people and the family, meaning they're invested in the emotional health of military and their families, because they're seeing that the great training is not only reducing injuries, suicide, mortality, but it's also reducing the stress of impacting the families. So that was really cool to see. And, you mentioning the injuries and the health, and we were talking about equipment, at the high school, things I picked up on my own dime were from a university that was getting a new weight room. I got two Swiss bars, 2 safety squat bars, 2 glute ham benches, and we've got like 40 mini bands. So every day, face pulls, pull aparts, hanging leg raises, hanging knee raises. So, a lot of that I was doing, I'd say a bit of it, but since you and I have really started chatting so much through these past 5 years or so, I incorporate it where everybody's doing about 100 reps of shoulder health work and probably 3 sets of that hanging, because it opens up the shoulder capsule, which is crucial for people who are sitting all day, and tractions out the back. So,
Well, it
first,
sounds like you got the right. I mean, you've always had a mindset, and it's all about how do you get somebody to perform and reduce mileage and give them better motor patterns. That's all you can do in the weight room. Yeah, I mean, strength and all that's great, but if it's not fixing motor patterns and you're not balancing out the kid and really having a good thought process on posture, you're just wasting your fucking time.
I call it strong and useless. You got people that could, lift heavy, but they can't bend. They're always hurting. They're not agile. And the percent of high school kids who will compete in college is 6 or 7%. So that
Mm-hmm.
means 90+% are not going to do this in college. But that being said, what I don't want is for these kids in their mid-20s to have shoulder problems because I did stupid, crazy, unbalanced shit. I go with your motto of when you're in your 20s, train like you're 40. So when you're in your 40s, you feel like you're in your 20s. And so that to me is like the, $1 million theme.
Yeah, exactly. All right, last question for you.
Last question is, you're posting when you're going through these different training cycles yourself. You're going through a hypertrophy phase, so you're doing block training, right? But you still use this conjugate approach to the exercise selection. So how do you, when you look at a year, like to my left, I have a big whiteboard. I think it's like a 4 by 6 foot. I map out like 5 to 6 months of business stuff. How do you map out the next half year to your training? What do you look at?
Well, the first thing I do is I take an analysis of not only, well, now it's changed since powerlifting is not my only endeavor. I'm trying to stay as strong as I can, be as athletic as I can, and anti-age as much as I possibly can, which still includes that a lot in without the yearly process. But the first thing that comes to mind when I lay out a year, which I do, about 12-month, I call it a blueprint, which is completely malleable, but it gives me a guide. The first thing is structural weaknesses, which I take from my max effort lifts. So I watch my benches and my squats and my deadlifts. I push them up to, say, a 9 RPE, because I'm not basing anything off percentages anymore. I don't really care to worry about that. So I'm looking at technical proficiency. I'm looking at where I have pain, where I feel like my joint might have unstable ability, where my muscles may not be functioning correctly, and my posture. Once I got those 5 things dialed in, the next thing I do is I look at what I'm doing now and what I did 6 months post to give me a snapshot of what I need to do 6 months prior to that assessment point. And what that does is it allows me not only a different path that I need to go, because I think what we have to understand is that no matter what, you're never in the same pond twice. You're always going to be a little older, maybe have a little bit of different business model, right? You never know. You might pick up another high school, or I might pick up another fire department. All things need to be weighed. So the first thing I ask myself is, what is my estimated amount of water that I have in my glass per day? Now, because I do an RPE or a rate of perceived exertion thought process, which I try to get everybody to do, because the Soviets figured out 50 years ago that your strength is adjustable by up to 10% per day for no apparent reason other than stressors, nutrition, hydration, all these things that we just can't really control all the time. And so what I found is that by using this adjustable scenario, I'm always training as hard as I can that day, but I'm never digging a hole too far. The pieces, like what you're asking, the power building, hypertrophy, off-season phases, they force me to utilize separate exercises while still sustaining volume in the weakest links. So if you really study those manuals like what you have from me, what I'm doing is I'm constantly attacking what I feel are most people's weaknesses, including my own, but I'm changing the stimulus to the weakness constantly in about every, well, weekly, but in a block phase, about every 12 weeks, I'm changing the emphasis. But what I find is that the skeleton in which I utilize to train, which is winning warm-ups, core lift, and accessories, never change. It's just the emphasis of which one is, I wouldn't say more important as a whole, but more important in that block. So the warm-ups turn into a lot more intensive. the core lift turns into something that's sustainable and maintainable. And then the accessories are brutal. I would say the only thing that stays the same, as you know, is accessories stay brutal year round because they are correcting weak points. But if I want my core lift to be of utmost importance, say I'm in a powerlifting phase, then my warm up turns into a real warm up, and my core lift turns into very specific, pushing it very, very hard, not saving near as much in the tank. And all I do is rotate that of what I'm doing. It might have a different name to the block, but the skeleton is exactly the same. It's just, are you approaching it with isolateral movements? Are you approaching it with bilateral movements? Are you utilizing different types of resistances that, depending on where you're at that cycle, may or may not elicit more gains? But again, you're always trying to manage mileage. So I find that if I'm in hypertrophy blocks, then power building blocks, then power lifting blocks, and then off-season blocks, it absolutely forces my mindset to not overtrain too long in one area, therefore fry the stimuluses that I'm using on a consistent basis. So that way, the next time they see him 6, 8, 10 months down the road, it still stays fresh, which is law of accommodation.
This is why the big lifts are what really beat up your body. And when I was young, I remember looking, the strongest guys never killed themselves on the biggest lifts. But as a kid who thought Dorian Yates was king of everything, I thought, he's not training hard, but his benching 405 looked just like 135. But I equated too much intensity with it. And also, you mentioned kind of the emotional and the cognitive aspect. Why do people struggle to be consistent? Because they try to go 0 to 100 miles an hour. You're going, you're driving the speed limit sometimes. Then your next block, you're doing 75, 80 miles an hour. Then another block, you might go 90 miles an hour. Then you might slow it down, which is what gives you longevity. Whereas the high intensity all the time, it destroys people emotionally. And Buddy Morris said this, 25 years ago. I've been saying all the time, emotional stress will crush you and impact your physical, which is why I tell, when I'm training, the college guys, what's harder, the last squat session or the last argument you had with your girlfriend? What exhausts you more? Then they start realizing, damn, I need to manage my emotions. Well, if you're always lifting heavy, intensely, you have to always get psyched up. And that's an emotional stressor, which starts chipping away at the physical. So when I watch your videos, Matt, I wasn't smart like this, let's say 15 years ago, but I pay attention. I see sometimes you don't need to get psyched up. That's what dynamic days are for, technical focus. Other days I could see that like a bomb could go off and you wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
You can't train like that all the time. You'll destroy yourself. And people need to learn that.
Yeah, and what's funny is that, advanced coaches, when they watch these videos, they pick up on those subtleties. Like, I usually put my brain in that fight or flight scenario now at over 40 about once a month, just to tap into those deep motors so I don't lose them. But what I've learned is that you really cannot make any more progress. It's not worth it to go over 90%. You can get all the benefits of max effort going to a 9 as you can a 10. But what you have to do as you get older is you have to rotate those stimuluses, because if you look at it, let's look at A.S. Philippin's chart. You can know it by the back of your head. I do too. The average percentage is around 77 to 82.
Yeah.
It's not 100 like everybody thinks. And that's the problem with our generation, but especially this new generation, is they look to the Ronnie Colemans and the Dorian Yateses like we did in the past. But they don't realize that what did it take them to build up to that, to sustain that level of damage. And then again, Dorian really wasn't that good for that long. Correct. Compared to strength athlete. To me, like Eddie Cohen lasted from 1982 to 2003. That is a career. But Dorian, what Olympias did he win, and how long was he on top?
I think his last one, he had a torn bicep, so then he maybe won 5 of them, but the 5th one was questionable. They said, how does a guy really win an Olympia with a torn bicep? And I want to say something, like, I love the RPEs, and I think it's important to understand RPE. This younger generation of coaches is very technologically based. So when you mentioned Prilpin's chart of this like 75 to 82.5%, look, now they're using a lot of these velocity measuring tools. I love that. But if you're an inexperienced coach, and let's say I have good bar speed, but my technique is, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10 is a 7 or 8, then to me, I'm not a fan of the bar speed, because you're sacrificing technique for the speed. Now, I'll play devil's advocate. In competition, football, baseball, wrestling, volleyball, I'm in positions that are quote unquote imperfect. So I understand that my training will not always be perfect. Training kids, you know, they've got a few years experience, but you have to, I think, try to like grasp the art of coaching with minimal to zero technology before you start measuring just bar speed, because your coach's eye. Yeah.
100%. I do not believe bar speed should be trained, but only in a technical fashion, and shouldn't be the main indicator of a performance base in the weight room, because especially at junior high and high school level, you show me a kid that can bench 185 pounds with insane explosiveness with perfect form, and I'm going to show you one kid out of 1,000.
Correct.
So you can't. So I think there's certain things that you can use, and there's certain things you can't use. But to case in point, you know, you have to know what is available to you at what time. Now, if you were working with a high school that had unlimited funds and you had a 1 to 5 coaching ratio from coach to athlete, there's so many more variables that open up to your disposal based on the fact that you have a better coaching eye because you don't have as big of groups. But in certain ways, there's just certain things you're just not going to be able to utilize. And in reality, the first 5 years of strength training should be mostly based on technical proficiency, not trying to really increase performance per se. And I think that was the biggest advantage to me, is from 13 to 18, my coaches only cared about how good I looked. And every time I went to a meet, I looked perfect. You could tell I was coached by pros, but every lift I ever did looked easy until I was 20 years old.
Training and coaching is, the more I learn, the more I realize this shit is super complicated. And I was thinking to myself, because I have an intern from a university at my private facility, plus he comes to the high school. And I was like, you know what? I understand there's like not enough jobs for all these coaches, but they'll oftentimes be a graduate assistant at 2 universities. And I'm thinking to myself, you probably need it. You need to coach your friggin' ass off, and you need to train. Interns train with the athletes. They don't start coaching or even observing. You want to learn? You better be great at lifting and training yourself. Because if you've never lifted heavy, and now you're a strength coach or a GA at Ohio State, or even like go to a small school like University of Cincinnati, something smaller, and there's guys benching 405, but you've only squatted 315, you have no understanding of the psyche required to get there. And so coaching somebody in that strength level is like foreign to you. It's like playing Pop Warner football and then trying to like walk on to a D1 football team. That's why you need yourself to immerse yourself in training and being coached before you could coach.
When I get frustrated when we go to a lot of these conferences, you know, I'm not going to say which, I mean, I'll say it, NSCA. I go to the NSCA conferences all the time, and I find that 50% of the people that when I get done speaking and I go out to the hallway, they're asking me questions, and I'm looking at them. They don't look like they've ever lifted weights. And I'm like, you really want a problem? Then why aren't you in the trenches doing what I did? Because I can explain this to you till I'm blue in the face, but you will not understand it until you feel it.
This is like, to me, that's a fatal, fatal problem. I can't remember who it was, but they said that like a lot of these GAs that they get don't lift. Some of them just want to go the software route. I get it. Okay, so you need to be more of like a computer engineer. But I think it's crucial that you know that you're lifting, so you understand, you know, you want to measure somebody's speed and they're sprinting. Have you
Mm-hmm.
sprinted before? Do you understand what impacts your
Yeah.
speed? What might hold it back? So that right there is, you know, I know there's a lot of like negativity against being a meathead, but if you want to be a great coach, you should be a meathead. You should be immersed
Yep.
in training where you bury yourself in lifting and books
Yep.
and seminars. You should want to go to coaches who rip you to shreds, and then you have a list of things to get better at. That's the
Yep.
only way to get better. I think it's, I saw a quote is that something like, go and get your ass kicked, meaning get around people that make you better.
Yeah, and the problem is the growth mindset is awesome, but it's not hard. It's very hard to teach, and you know, I think some of it you have to be born into it a little bit. And the other big thing I think is you have to be willing to go around people that are hard on you that are going to make you grow, because the people that are easy on you are not setting you up for success. I'm telling you right now, you know as well as I do, you've been doing this at the professional level a little bit longer because you're a little older, and I went and got my master's. But you know, in 2005, when I got thrown out on my ass to start this business and get it rolling, you start realizing that all the people that gave you a hard time were actually helping you, and all the people that were just getting you through, now all of that is completely worthless. You know?
Today, yeah, today I was very hard on a group. I brought them in, and I reminded them, I said, guys, I'll fucking burn this gym down. I'll shut it down. If I'm hard on you, it's because I care. So I said, let's go opposite. You half-ass it, I'm going to high-five you and encourage you. You want to skip this warm-up because you're coming from practice? I'll encourage you to do this. Is that what you want out of a coach? Because if you do, you'll be fucking sitting on the bench getting splinters in your ass. So I said, if you're here, it means you signed up to be a winner. And that's who I'm training. And I said to them, to understand, I kicked my son out of the gym, you know, a couple months ago. He's young, but I said, in the weight room, it don't matter the color of your skin, how much money's in the bank. It doesn't matter. It only measures your work and your effort. On the sport field, we could see talent, but no coach wants talented kids who don't work. They will be a problem on that team within short time. And you know, you saying you got to rip people apart, today people get offended by it. What they don't understand is I'm trying to get you better. My job is to get you better, and sometimes I got to push you beyond this comfort zone.
For sure. Well, Mike, they got me a time clock on the top. I guess now you can only go so long on the live feed. But I will see you here in a couple of weeks. We're going to be running it back. It's going to be good. I'm going to try to stay an extra couple of days and chill. So we're going to be able to hang out and shoot some shit and shoot some other videos. But I'll talk to you soon. I'm glad that we get to do this again, man, now that COVID's over.
I know. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Matt, talk to you later, brother.